We'll continue. Mr. Secretary, we'll start around with 7 minutes. Thank you for your statement. We just saw that Xi Jinping is doubling down on his commitment to support Russia's Vladimir Putin. Xi is no peacemaker. He seems ready to validate Russia's war crimes in Ukraine, require nothing of them to resolve the crisis, except to blame the West and the Ukrainians for having the audacity to put up a fight against an illegal invasion. But in the process, Putin has become Xi's junior partner, because I was looking at those agreements, and they basically largely go one way towards China in terms of investments, but very little in back as it relates to Russia. But he needs the international approval that he thinks Xi gives him, and obviously they need each other for a variety of reasons. This is just emblematic of the global strategic challenge that China is to us. We are focused on Ukraine, of course, as Russia continues its illegal assault upon the Ukrainian people and its war crimes. And I appreciate that the administration said crimes against humanity. But our long-term geostrategic challenge is China. How do you think this budget helps us begin to resource that challenge? Because we have more embassies, more personnel in the Chinese Communist Party around the world than we do of our own.
No, I very much appreciate the question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. A few things. First, there are a number of things beyond the budget that we've done to put ourselves in a stronger position to deal with the competition from China. One of the, as I said, are the investments that we've made in ourselves over the last couple of years, which are having a powerful impact around the world as people see that we're serious about our own future. And I point again specifically to chips and science, but as well as some other legislation. Second, we have made a very significant effort to align with allies and partners around the world. And we're seeing that play out in Europe, we're seeing that play out in Asia, in terms of having a more common approach to the challenges posed by China. Having said that, this also needs to be effectively resourced. One of the reasons that we are putting forward a request for mandatory allocations here is because we are facing a generational challenge. And we think that discretionary alone is not enough to help us outcompete China. We have to find, and the budget proposes, some new and innovative ways to provide viable alternatives at scale that discretionary funding does not. So I think if you look at some of the work that we're trying to do, we have a proposal for $400 million to counter specific actions by China that counter our interests in the Indo-Pacific and beyond. $2 billion for high-quality infrastructure projects to more effectively compete with the work that China does that is not just economic, it's strategic in terms of advancing infrastructure. We need to be able, not of course to match them dollar for dollar, which we'll never do, but to be more effective in catalyzing private sector investment and doing it in a more coordinated way with allies and partners. We have investments in Indo-Pacific economies. We have a new DFC fund, which is a critical tool, I think, to leveraging private sector investment. And we have this commitment to the Compacts of Free Association with the Marshall Islands, with Palau, with Micronesia, as well as more broadly with the Pacific Islands, where we are going to significantly increase our presence and engagement, all of which needs to be funded.
I appreciate that. I think we need, and Senator Romney has raised this several times, this is like a whole-of-government perspective. I've asked you about the State Department, but you need a whole-of-government strategy to meet the challenge of China. The CHIPS Act was one element of that the Congress passed last year. I hope we can get a strategic vision from the administration as to all the integrations of an all-of-government approach. These are good elements of that, but we need something broader, and we look forward to working with you on that. I want to turn to Iran for a moment. We have the committee stand in recess. Back to order. I would ask maybe you should ask the million Uyghurs in concentration camps how they feel about that. Let me ask you about Iran. So Iran continues to march on in its fissile materials, about 87% now. Still hasn't come clean with the IAEA about its previous undeclared places. is providing drones. Yesterday there was an enormous number of strikes against Ukraine by Iranian drones given to the Russians, and obviously they must be getting things from the Russians that they need, particularly in equipment that they need to ultimately achieve some of their goals. We have their oils being exported to countries that are not observing the sanctions. At the end of the day, when are we going to get our European allies to join us in coming to the understanding that we're at a point that despite their best efforts, Iran has not lived up to its obligations to them under the JCPOA, to the international community, and continues to be a challenge?
Mr. Chairman, I actually think they're at that point.
Are they ready to multilateralize sanctions with us?
So, two things. One is, as a result of the effort to get back into mutual compliance with the JCPOA and the fact that Iran rejected what was put on the table by the European Union, by France, by Germany, by the United Kingdom, as well as us, and actually supported at the time by Russia and China, I think that has demonstrated to our partners in Europe that Iran was not serious about genuinely re-engaging on nuclear diplomacy. At the same time, the developments of the last 6 months, to include the provision of drones to Russia for its war of aggression against Ukraine, to include, of course, what's happening in the streets of Iran, the repression of its people, all of that has further concentrated minds in a significant way, including in Europe. We have taken increasingly coordinated actions together with our partners, particularly with regard to sanctions. We continue to do that. We are pushing back with them on the provision of drones and other technologies to Russia, including seeking to break up the networks, trying to get at the dual-use items that go into the manufacturing of these drones. And of course, we are working ourselves to deal with the actions that some of their proxies are taking in the Middle East itself, in Iraq and in Syria.
I just think, Mr. Secretary, that the Europeans have not joined us in multilateralizing our sanctions, which at this time to Iran would have a huge consequence and hopefully change their calculus in a peaceful way. And I just hope we can engage more vigorously with them. I certainly talk to those who come to visit us and parliamentarians from those countries. It's time to come to the conclusion that if we want Iran to move in a different course, others have to join us as well. And I hope we are more robust in that part of the element of how we're dealing with Iran. Senator